So today, we're going to dive into how Block, the company behind Square and Cash App, is completely rebuilding itself from the ground up to be an AI-native company. And look, this isn't just about plugging in a few new tools. This is a blueprint for what happens when a massive company decides to bet its entire future on artificial intelligence.
To really get a feel for how radically things are changing inside Block, just imagine this. An engineer is on Slack, just talking with a colleague, brainstorming a new feature. They don't write a single line of code. Then, a few hours later, a pull request, which is basically just a chunk of new code ready to be added to the project, it just appears. And the author? It's not a person. It's an AI agent named Goose. This isn't science fiction. This is the new normal at Block. Now, a change this huge doesn't happen by accident, right? It all kicked off with one single, incredibly important memo, the AI Manifesto.
So let's rewind about 2.5 years. Dhanji Prasanna, who at the time was just a part-time engineer, he writes this AI Manifesto and sends it straight to the top, to CEO Jack Dorsey. And the message was super clear. Block had to stop treating AI like some side hustle. It needed to go all in, become AI native, and centralize everything to make it happen. And Dorsey's response? He basically said, "You're right, you do it," and offered him the CTO job to lead the whole thing.
But here's the part that might surprise you. Before they could build any of the cool AI tools like Goose, they had to deal with something way more fundamental, and let's be honest, kind of boring. They had to fix their organizational structure. And this turned out to be the foundation for everything that came next.
Let's just look at the before and after, because it's a huge shift. Block used to have this general manager structure. You can basically think of it as a bunch of little companies living under one roof. Cash App had its own engineers, Square had its own engineers, and so on. It just created these silos and so much wasted, duplicated effort. The big move was switching to a functional structure. So now all engineers report to one head of engineering. And that was the key to creating a single unified strategy for AI across the entire company.
And this whole reorganization, it's a perfect real-world example of a classic idea in software called Conway's Law. The law basically says that the software you build is always going to be a mirror image of how your teams communicate. So if you want to build a different kind of product, you have to change your org chart first. For Block, this wasn't just shuffling boxes around. It was a strategic move to build the technology they knew they needed.
Okay, so the new structure is in place. The foundation is set. Now Block was ready to build its main weapon in this AI transformation. Let's talk about the super tool they call Goose.
So what is this thing? What exactly is Goose, and why is it such a complete game changer for them?
Well, at its core, Goose is a general-purpose AI agent. It's actually an open-source app you can run on your desktop. And yet, it's got a chat window, but don't mistake it for just another chatbot. It can plug into any of the big AI models, Claude, OpenAI, whatever, and it gives that AI brain the arms and legs it needs to actually go do things in other software. And get this, it can even write its own code to learn how to control new tools it's never seen before.
The real secret sauce here is something they call the Model Context Protocol, or MCP. Let's walk through it. Say a user types, "Build me a marketing report." First, Goose sends that to an LLM, which acts as the brain and figures out all the steps. Then, using MCPs as its hands and feet, it connects to all the different tools it needs. It'll go write SQL code in Snowflake, run analysis in Python, whip up some charts, and then package the whole thing into a PDF and email it to you. It does all of that on its own.
And that brings us right back to our engineer from the beginning. He literally set up Goose to just watch his screen and read his conversations. And as the quote says, a few hours later, he'll find that Goose has already tried to build that feature and open a PR for it. I mean, think about that. The AI is anticipating what he needs before he even starts working on it. It's not just a tool you command, it's a partner that's actively collaborating with you. This all sounds absolutely incredible, but it brings up the big question, right? What are the actual measurable results? Is this really working? Let's look at the numbers.
For the engineering teams that are really leaning in and using these AI tools, they're self-reporting that they save about 8 to 10 hours per week. That is an entire workday every single week just handed back to them.
But here's maybe the even crazier stat. This isn't just about engineers. When you look at the entire company, we're talking legal, risk, support, everybody. Block is already on a path to saving 20 to 25% of all manual hours worked. That's huge.
But what's really telling is the mindset behind these numbers. Block's CTO said, "This is the worst it will ever be. This is now the baseline." In other words, this is just the starting point. The technology is only going to get better from here, so these productivity gains are the absolute floor.
Now, you'd think the engineers would be the ones seeing the biggest gains, right? But one of the most surprising things they found was the massive impact on non-technical teams. People in departments like enterprise risk can now use Goose to build their own custom software tools in a matter of hours. Before this, they'd have to file a ticket and wait, sometimes for months, for an engineering team to get to it. This is just a massive unlock for the whole company.
So, where does all of this lead? What does this AI native world really mean for the future of the engineer and how software gets built?
Well, the way people code is changing fast. A lot of developers today are doing what you might call vibe coding. You know, that slow back and forth ping pong match with a chatbot, trying to nudge it in the right direction. The future that Block is building is all about AI autonomy. A human sets the goal, defines the experiment, and then these AI agents just work around the clock, overnight, running tons of experiments in parallel. The engineer's job becomes less about writing code and more about reviewing the finished results in the morning.
In this new reality, it just completely shatters some of the oldest, most deeply held beliefs in engineering. I mean, listen to this quote. A lot of engineers think that code quality is important to building a successful product. The two have nothing to do with each other. That's a pretty provocative thing to say, but it points to a massive shift in thinking.
So what's the point? It forces everyone back to what actually matters. The goal was never to write perfect, elegant code just for the sake of it. The goal is to solve a real problem for a real person, like helping a merchant at a coffee shop make a sale. When AI can write and rewrite code almost for free, the how you build it becomes way less important than the why.
And that leaves us with this one last, truly mind-bending thought. The cost of actually writing software is plummeting towards zero. So, what would the world look like if, for every single new release, we just deleted the entire app and had an AI rebuild it from scratch? What kind of possibilities does that open up? That's the question that companies like Block are now forcing all of us to think about.